Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, "Neighbor family used my driveway as their private parking lot. I got them towed." I live in a cul-de-sac with other houses on either side of my property. It is quite a lovely neighborhood, and although my neighbors are nice, I believe they have taken advantage of me and my niceness as well. Being that we do live in a cul-de-sac, parking can be a bit trickier if we have guests over or are throwing a party. However, whenever I, myself, have guests coming over, they only park in my driveway or in front of my house. 2 times they have parked in front of someone else's house, but I've always let my neighbors know and it was never an issue. So here is where the issue begins. I'm aware that the parking is limited in our neighborhood and in the cul-de-sac, so one weekend when my neighbors were throwing a birthday party for their son, I allowed them to park 2 vehicles in my driveway. Our driveways were kind of side by side with each other and there was no official marker between them. However, I did not think after this that they would keep on parking their car there. However, they took advantage of this and kept parking their second car in my driveway. One day, weeks later, my husband came home and could not even park in our driveway because our neighbor's car was parked. I was home at the time, but I had not even realized they had parked in our driveway. It was awfully late as well, or else we would have gone over there and asked them to move. When we got up the next morning, their car was gone. A few days later, the car was parked in our driveway again at night. We decided to write a polite note and stick it on the car so that hopefully this would let them know that we were not okay with them parking in our driveway. However, just a few days after we placed the note there, the car was back. We even tried talking to our neighbor face to face, and when we confronted them about it, they were apologetic and even said they felt bad for parking in our driveway. They assured us that this would not happen again. Of course, however, it did happen again. As a matter of fact, it happened several times and I was becoming increasingly frustrated because when my husband came home from work, he would have to park in the street. I know it may not seem important, but it seemed quite ridiculous because we could not even park in our own driveway. I'm not a very direct person and I do admit I avoid confrontation. I was starting to think I was too nice when I spoke to them or left them notes. Either way, I had enough. I figured this was not a police matter, or it was, I'm not really sure, but I decided to call a towing company and have their car towed from my driveway. I let them know that this car was not mine and showed them mine and my husband's registrations and whatnot to prove it. They ended up towing the car out of our driveway and our neighbors have not parked there since. I am only assuming they had to pay the towing company in order to get their car back. And while it sucks that our neighborly relationship was ruined, they no longer speak to us, I was glad that we were able to park in our driveway again. Some people are just extremely entitled. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would definitely agree with OP in this situation. Towing the neighbors was absolutely the correct decision. These neighbors seemed entitled to no end, so they definitely deserved the towing. If you would have been in OP's situation, would you have done the same? Or would you have warned the neighbors first? Because surely after a situation like this, the neighbors might be pissed at you for quite a long time. Either way, if you enjoy the stories about entitled neighbors, then please feel free to post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much in advance. The next one is another Ask Reddit story concerning the topic creepy true stories. I was driving through Illinois to get to Chicago about a decade ago with a group of friends and we stopped at a Taco Bell. The first thing we noticed was that the workers were acting very odd. Everything they said was monotone and rehearsed. After sitting in this fairly busy restaurant for a bit, we kind of all just looked at each other at the same time as we realized that none of the conversations happening around us made any sense. The people were speaking and it was English, but the sentences were not logical. They were just saying words at each other. We did not say much about it until we got outside, at which point we all freaked out and confirmed each other's experiences at once and got the F out of there. We jokingly refer to that place as the NPC training center, since the people did not seem to be real, or they were learning how to be human or something. It still freaks me out. And yes, I believe the orders were all correct, which I guess just ups the creepy factor. Edit number 2, we were young and actually pretty straight edge at the time, none of us were high or anything. Edit 3, the best I can remember about the weird conversations was that they were stringing several prepositions in a row with no real sentence structure, forced laughter and nodding, stuff like that. Like they were mimicking how humans talk. Think of those what English sounds like to a non-speaker videos on YouTube, but everybody was doing it all around us. A user in the comments has helped me determine that Pontiac, Illinois is possibly the town, has a TB right off of 55. I was not clear yesterday, but the weird conversations were happening between customers, not just the workers, so it was not the crew trying to mess with us. If it was just the workers, I would totally buy that theory. I used to work retail, and you would do anything to make the day go by faster. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you ever had any true, real creepy experiences of your own, then please feel free to share them in the comments with the rest of our Ripe Star community. The next one is another true creepy story. I posted this on Let's Not Meet a while back. This story takes place in the mid-90s, a time before widely used cell phones and GPS. My two best friends and I, freshly able to drive, decided we would head out on a Saturday to a water park in southern Missouri, about a 3-hour drive from our hometown in northwest Arkansas. We had never been there before and just used road maps to get there. We had a pretty fantastic time, but as the sun started to reach the tree line, we thought we ought to head home. It's about 7 o'clock and we miss a turn, but my friend Paul, who was navigating, said not to worry, another turn was coming up that would get us there just as fast. The next turn took us from detour to completely lost. By 8 o'clock we are on a road that seemed to be lacking in informative road signs and zero lights. We finally see a gas station and are relieved to get some directions as well as some gas. My friend Taylor and I go inside while Paul pumps the gas. We come inside and a very friendly old man in his early 60s who gives us a very large grin and says, "Well, hello there." It was very Foghorn Leghorn-esque, looked like an extreme hillbilly but very pleasant. We explained that we were needing gas and wanted to fill up. He explained that he was about to shut down for the night but would be happy to oblige us. He then said something I will never forget. "You have to make haste though, tonight is buffer night." Taylor and I looked at each other and shared an awkward look. We asked him if he could point out our location on the road map. While he was finding it, two people entered the shop from the back and called out for the old man. He said he was up front. The two approached us, a man and a woman, and at first they looked confused and then, as though hit with an epiphany, they smiled. They asked the old man, "Are these the guests tonight?" He shot them a look and said, "No, these are some lost children." The way he said "children" caused the hairs on my neck to stand up. Not sure why. They looked at us and said, "The three of you should make haste, because tonight is buffer night." Two things scared the crap out of me right then. The first being, how did they know about Paul pumping gas out front when they came from the back, and the second being that they repeated the old man verbatim. We clarified the directions to get back on a main highway and paid for the gas without waiting for change. Taylor and I booked it out of the gas station to find Paul already in the passenger seat. When we got into the car, we were nearly airborne from the speed we took off. Before we could say anything, Paul told us about how 3 men from across the street stood under a tree just watching him. He waved, but they did not move a muscle. We just drove as fast as we could until we got back to the highway. To this day, I will still have a nightmare every so often about that gas station and what my imagination has twisted buffer night into being. And as some of you guys know, I really enjoy the TV show called American Horror Show, and they once had a season about the Roanoke colony, which I think was one of the first or maybe the first English settlement in North America. And I gotta say, I would really recommend you to watch that season, at least if you're into horror TV shows, because it was really creepy and it sort of reminds me of these Ask Reddit true creepy stories. The next one is another Ask Reddit story, and it starts like this. By my hometown there was a hiking trail that people went to very infrequently. It was along the side of the Niagara escarpment, so it had some climbable cliffs and some very shallow caves that you could crawl around on. I went with some friends when I was 19 or 20, and we were crawling around and found a cave that went pretty deep. We had never been in there before and had never even seen it before, so we pushed forward and decided to check it out, even though we had no flashlights, and this was when cell phones did not really have a flashlight function. We stepped into the cave and it was easily 20 to 30 degrees cooler than outside. Upon looking around with which light we noticed it was really clean inside the cave, as in it did not have beer cans littered everywhere like all the other small caves usually did. While in there we got a really eerie feeling after being in there shortly, hearing weird and strange things, feeling like we were being touched, poked and pulled, and not having any way to figure out who was doing it because it was too dark. We were just using lighters to see what was around us. We were convinced one of us was messing with the others, although anytime we sparked up a lighter, we were all decently far apart. We decided to hightail it out of there after only a few minutes, convinced to come back with flashlights. We came out to see that it was now dusk outside. When we entered it was midday. Somehow we had lost roughly 3 hours inside of this cave. We went back with flashlights the next week, but have never been able to find this cave again. Edit: I got 8 PMs asking where this is. It is in Wisconsin Oakfield Ledge if you wanna check it out. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if anyone in the comments by some mysterious coincidence is from that area, maybe you are aware of any creepy caves. Let us know in the comments. And the next Ask Reddit story starts like this. My story is less creepy than it is odd, and I've posted it before, so you may have seen it. When I was 13 years old, I bicycled the Natchez Trace Parkway from Mississippi up to Nashville, Tennessee with my dad over the course of a week. As much as I know I complained about the difficulty, it was a great trip with some amazing bonding. I still cannot believe my mother let me go. This would have been the late 90s. The most interesting story on the journey comes from the day from Belmont, MS to Waynesboro, Tennessee. The previous day we had ridden further than we expected, 92 miles, because we could not find a motel room, and we were not biking and camping on this trip, probably my mom's plea. Needless to say, we were a little tired from the previous day. It's a good 75 miles to Waynesboro, but we had a motel tour guide of the trip that said a small motor lodge would be available. The terrain was rolling hills, and they got more difficult after we crossed the Tennessee River in northwest Alabama, so we were ready to be done. We got off the parkway and went about 4 miles west. This little place was not actually in the town, it was just an old motor lodge along US 64. It looked straight out of the 50s and had one pickup and one semi-bobtail parked out front. It looked closed and we were a little worried. There was not anything else listed in our guide, we were dead tired and no one lives in this part of Tennessee. But we walked in and sure enough, a couple was at the window and ready to get us a room. In fact, they even had a small diner that they were trying to get open, so we were welcome to join them for dinner. Awesome, you better believe we wanna have dinner with you. We took a room and we were in fact the only ones there besides the trucker. We opened the door and what a horrible place. For starters, the walls were that old faux wood board and had seen better days. The carpet was orange shag from probably the 50s or 60s. Maybe original to the building. The beds were hard, and it was about 95 degrees in the room from the day's heat with no AC turned on, which is perfect for after a long hot bicycle ride. TVs had rabbit ears and got about 1.5 channels. This was 1999, mind you. There was a huge old window unit that we turned on ASAP. We took cold showers to get feeling normal, while the other hung outside with the door open and went to dinner to let the room cool off. There was no traffic on this road, hardly a sign for the town a few more miles up the road. Back in the office/diner, the lights outside were now on and it was obvious we were the only ones in for dinner. Food? Not that good, but you will eat anything after a workout of 75 miles. But the folks who ran the place were just wonderful. A husband and wife, they had bought the motel days prior and were trying to get it running again. Would have been closed if we were there a few days before. They were keeping the old place open while they started to redo rooms and get the diner running. They talked about the place and how they wanted to start something like this and how they hoped it would go. They were really interested in us as well and probably listening for the tourist aspect of what we were doing on the bike trip. The gentleman said that he thought they could get some folks to the diner by introducing a karaoke night. He had just bought a machine and had it hooked up to a TV, but it was not working and he could not figure it out. I offered to give it a shot and I don't know exactly what I did, but in a couple tries it was fixed and he sang a song. And then the power went out. The couple brought out some candles and said that this had already happened to them twice now, but it was not them and they did not know why it kept happening. We all talked in the dark for a bit and then we said our good nights. Went back to our room and it was still hot. My father and I talked about the place and he said that there was no way that their idea was going to work, but it was too bad because they were nice people. Went pretty much straight to the uncomfortable beds. Power came on at some point before midnight. Next morning we had a pretty good breakfast at the diner and the couple was so apologetic. Nah, it happens, we were happy they were here, we wished each other luck and left out after that. A few days later, after we got to Nashville and took a bus back to get our minivan to go home, we stopped by again just to say hi. The place was closed up and locked up, no one there. I have tried to look up the place again, but it's been long since demolished. I know the place failed under those folks, but they tried something and they were gracious hosts. And the last Ask Reddit story starts like this. I'm a little late to the party now, but near where I live there is a little town called Ridgeview Park. My friend was talking to a new girl and we were scoping out where she lived so he would not get lost on his upcoming date when we took a wrong turn. After a slight decline, the road sharply rose until we crossed some train tracks and were met with a fence about 20 feet tall, made from wood pillars about the size around of a telephone poles. There was a gate that was open, so we drove in. Once inside, there is a single loop that winds through the whole complex, only wide enough for one car. One way in, one way out. In the middle sits a large dome/church. The houses that surround it are all square two-story homes painted brightly in strange colors. There is a drain community pool off to one side with grass growing in the basin. Lined up along the very back of the loop are 50 to 70 single car garage doors all right next to each other. No house appears to have their own. It was strangely quiet and as we drove past the homes, residents would step outside and watch us. The loop is not too large and we eventually made our way around and exited through the gate and some people walked closer watching us leave. I have not seen anything else like it. Their website is password protected and their Facebook page is private. The part you can see says it is a summer community that started out as a Methodist camp and still has religious services and that they only sell homes to members of the family. Such a creepy vibe to the whole place and we try to drive through at least once a year when the gate is open. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.